When Melissa stepped into that small thrift shop on an ordinary Friday afternoon, she never imagined a $2 purchase would lead her to make the most urgent phone call of her life. Some bargains come with hidden costs. Melissa Garrison never expected that a quick stop at Second Chance's thrift shop would change her life forever. A 38-year-old archivist at the County Historical Society, she had developed a habit of browsing local secondhand stores on Friday afternoons, hunting for overlooked historical treasures. "Just looking for picture frames today," she told Bernie, the elderly shop owner, who nodded from behind his cluttered counter. The small bell above the door jangled as another customer entered the cramped space. The store smelled of old books and furniture polish. Melissa made her way to the back wall, where dozens of framed photos, prints, and paintings leaned against each other in dusty disarray. Most were the usual thrift store fare, mass-produced landscapes, and forgotten family portraits. But one small, darkened photograph in a simple wooden frame caught her eye.
Quick pause here.
Filthy,
if this story's grabbing your interest, tap like and subscribe.
The $2
it really
price
helps me
tag
keep bringing you
scribbled on
these
masking
tales.
tape seemed almost apologetic. "Find anything good?" Bernie called out as she approached the register. "Maybe," Melissa replied, handing over 2 crumpled dollar bills. "Hard to tell under all this grime." "Been there forever," Bernie shrugged. "Some guy brought in a box of old stuff last month. Said he cleared out his grandfather's attic." Melissa tucked the frame into her bag and headed home to her small apartment. Friday night plans consisted of takeout Chinese food and a documentary. The mysterious photograph could wait until morning when she'd have better light. But curiosity got the better of her. After dinner, she cleared her kitchen table, laid out her archival tools, cotton gloves, soft cloths, a magnifying glass, and carefully removed the frame's backing. The photograph was a tintype, approximately 4 by 5 inch, in a format popular in the late 19th century. As she gently cleaned the surface, details emerged: a weathered wooden cabin, bare trees, and several figures gathered outside. The image quality suggested it dated back to the 1880s, depicting what appeared to be an American frontier scene. "Not bad for $2, Melissa murmured, examining it under her desk lamp. One figure stood apart from the others, a young man in a distinctive striped vest, leaning casually on what looked like a croquet mallet. Something about his stance seemed eerily familiar. Melissa froze, her heart suddenly racing. She'd spent her career studying historical photographs, particularly those from the American West. Those features, that posture, it couldn't be. She reached for her phone and pulled up a saved image from the Historical Society database, the famous authenticated photograph of William H. Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid, the infamous outlaw who had been shot dead at 21 by Sheriff Pat Garrett in 1881. "Oh my God," she whispered, looking back and forth between the images. "It's him!" Saturday morning found Melissa surrounded by books, printouts, and her laptop. Sleep had been impossible after her discovery. If authentic, this photograph would be only the 3rd confirmed image of Billy the Kid ever found. The first had sold for $2.3 million in 2011. The second, discovered by a man named Randy Gujaro and authenticated after years of research, had been insured for $5 million. But authentication would require extensive evidence. Melissa knew that better than most. She carefully scanned the photograph at high resolution, then began enhancing different sections digitally. The more she examined it, the more convinced she became. The figure's features matched known descriptions of Billy the Kid: slight build, prominent protruding upper teeth, and a signature hat tilted at a distinctive angle. "Who are you all?" she muttered, examining the other figures. "If this truly showed Billy, then the others might be members of his gang, the Regulators." She counted 5 other people, 4 men, and possibly a woman in period dress. Melissa spent hours cross-referencing historical records of Billy's known associates against the faces in the photograph. 2 seemed to match descriptions of Charlie Boder and Doc Scurlock, both confirmed members of the Regulators during the Lincoln County War.
By Sunday evening, she had compiled enough preliminary evidence to approach her boss, Dr. Lawrence Weber, director of the Historical Society. "You found this where?" Dr. Weber asked Monday morning, examining the photograph through his reading glasses. "Thrift store. Paid $2, Melissa replied, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. The photographic format, clothing styles, and composition all match the period, and look at the figure in the striped vest. Dr. Weber? Weber's expression remained skeptical as he compared it with known images of the outlaw. Interesting similarity, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Remember the Brushy Bill Roberts controversy? Melissa nodded. For decades, a man named Brushy Bill Roberts had claimed to be Billy the Kid, insisting he hadn't been killed by Pat Garrett, but had escaped and lived into old age. Most historians dismissed his claims. I know. That's why I need your help to authenticate this properly. What's your next step? Dr. Weber asked. I need to identify the location, Melissa explained. If I can prove where this photograph was taken and connect it to Billy's known whereabouts, that's a crucial piece of evidence. With Dr. Weber's reluctant approval, Melissa took a week of vacation time to pursue her research. She contacted Western history experts, focusing on specialists in New Mexico Territory circa 1878 to 1881. One name kept appearing in her research: Professor Elizabeth Blackwood at the University of New Mexico, renowned for her work on the Lincoln County War. Melissa emailed her the scanned image. The professor's response came within hours. Interesting. The landscape and cabin structure are consistent with Tunstall's ranch. Note the distinctive mountain formation in the background. Call me. Their phone conversation left Melissa breathless. Tunstall's murder had triggered the Lincoln County War, during which Billy the Kid rose to notoriety as a regulator. If this photograph was taken at Tunstall's ranch, it placed Billy exactly where historical records suggested he would have been. There's something else, Professor Blackwood said before ending their call. The cabin layout matches descriptions of Tunstall's property, but I noticed something about the tree line. Check the far right edge of the photograph just beyond the cabin. Melissa adjusted the contrast on her digital scan and zoomed in on the area in question. What she saw made her stomach clench. The enhanced image revealed what appeared to be a body hanging from a tree in the background of the photograph. The figure was partially obscured by branches, but the silhouette was unmistakable. A human form suspended by the neck. This changes everything, Melissa whispered. Historical accounts mentioned numerous lynchings during the Lincoln County War, but none specifically at Tunstall's ranch. If this photograph documented an unknown killing, it might reveal a previously undocumented chapter of the conflict. But something else caught her attention as she continued examining the enhanced image. Near the hanging figure, partially visible behind a tree, stood another person. Unlike the others posed in the foreground, this figure seemed to be watching from a distance, face turned directly toward the camera. Melissa zoomed in further on this observer. Despite the graininess, she could make out a distinctive feature, a deep scar running from the left eye down to the jaw. She spent the next 3 days in research mode, tracing accounts of known associates and enemies of Billy the Kid and the regulators. Historical descriptions of one name stood out: James Scarface Wilson, a hired gunman rumored to have worked for the opposing faction in the Lincoln County War. Several accounts described Wilson's distinctive facial scar, earned in a knife fight. More importantly, he had disappeared from historical records around 1879, presumed killed during the conflict, though his body was never found. The photograph was disturbing, but depicted events from nearly 150 years ago. All participants were long dead, unless they weren't. The thought struck her suddenly. She remembered Bernie mentioning the photograph came from someone clearing out their grandfather's attic. What if these items had been preserved as family heirlooms? Melissa carefully removed the photograph from its frame again, this time examining the wooden backing more closely. Barely visible in the lower corner was a small pencil inscription, J.W. and Kin, 1878, Justice Served. She flipped the frame over. It felt hollow. Within the frame, someone had attached a small envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was a folded piece of paper containing a list of names and dates, starting with James Wilson, 1878, and continuing through multiple generations. Melissa's hands trembled as she realized what she was looking at, a family record, possibly documenting a vigilante legacy spanning generations. The final name on the list? Bernard Wilson, Bernie, the thrift store owner. She grabbed her phone and searched local news archives. 3 unsolved murders in the last 5 years shared a disturbing similarity. All victims were found hanging from trees in remote locations outside town. Police had attributed them to suicide initially, but questions remained. "It can't be," Melissa whispered. She returned to the photograph, examining every detail with renewed urgency. Enhancing the James Scarface Wilson section revealed something that made her blood run cold. A distinctive medallion with an unusual design. She had seen this medallion before, hanging around Bernie's neck at the thrift store. Melissa's research into historical vigilante justice revealed that some frontier justice committees had passed down tokens or medallions as symbols of their authority, unofficial badges for those who operated outside the law. She checked the photograph one more time, comparing the scarred face of James Wilson with old pictures of Bernie she found on the thrift store's social media page. The resemblance was unmistakable. Same eye shape, same jawline, same prominent nose. Then she remembered something else. Bernie had mentioned a special collection he kept in the thrift store basement for serious collectors. He'd invited her to view it sometime, given her interest in historical artifacts. But just the day before, a local news alert had reported a missing person, a young history student from the community college who had been last seen entering Second Chance's thrift shop. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Melissa looked at the list again. The pattern suggested another justice served was imminent. Her hands shaking, she reached for her phone and dialed 911. "Emergency services. What's your emergency?" a dispatcher asked. "I need to report evidence of multiple murders," Melissa said, her voice barely steady. "I bought a photo for $2 in a thrift store. When I looked closer, I found proof connecting the owner to historical and recent killings. There might be someone in danger right now." Detective Sarah Reyes arrived within 20 minutes, skepticism evident in her expression as Melissa spread the evidence across her kitchen table. "Let me get this straight," Detective Reyes said, adjusting her glasses. "You believe the owner of Second Chance's thrift shop is carrying on a family tradition of vigilante killings based on a photograph from the 1800s and a list of names?" "I know how it sounds," Melissa admitted. "But look at the medallion in the photograph and the one Bernie wears. They're identical, and these names and dates correspond with unsolved deaths in this region dating back generations." Detective Reyes examined the list with growing interest. Some of these names do match cold cases. Raymond Miller, 1967, Thomas Jenkins, 1992. She looked up. But connecting them to Bernie Wilson requires more than a family resemblance and an old photograph. What about the missing student? Melissa's phone rang, interrupting them. It was Dr. Weber. "Melissa, you need to come in immediately. A man just dropped off a donation of historical items," he said. "Said they belonged to Billy the Kid. He mentioned knowing you bought one of the pieces already." Her blood ran cold. What did he look like? "Older gentleman. Mentioned he runs that thrift shop you found your photograph in." Melissa put the phone on speaker so Detective Reyes could hear. "Did he say anything else?" the detective asked sharply. "Just that he had more historical artifacts in his basement collection if we're interested. He seemed eager for you specifically to come see them tonight. He said it can't wait until morning." After ending the call, Detective Reyes immediately requested backup to search the thrift store. "You're staying here," she instructed Melissa firmly. "But I'm the one who recognized the historical connections. You might miss something crucial."
This isn't a historical excavation. It's potentially a murder investigation.
Eventually, they compromised. Melissa would accompany the police but remain in a secured vehicle until the premises were cleared. As they drove toward downtown, Melissa explained more about the Lincoln County War, Billy the Kid's role as a regulator, and the complex morality of frontier justice. "The regulators started as lawmen," she explained. "They were deputized to apprehend the murderers of John Tunstall. But things escalated, and some took justice into their own hands. If Bernie's ancestor was on the opposing side, he might have seen the regulators as criminals who escaped proper punishment." "And you think this family has been carrying out their version of justice for generations?" Detective Reyes asked. "The list suggests they targeted people they believed had escaped legal consequences. The most recent local victims all had charges dropped against them for various offenses. When they arrived at Second Chances, the store was dark, but light spilled from the basement windows. Detective Reyes left Melissa in the police vehicle with an officer while she joined the tactical team entering the building. 20 minutes passed before Detective Reyes returned, her expression grim. "We found your missing student," she said, "alive but drugged in the basement, with a collection of historical artifacts and contemporary evidence linking Bernie Wilson to 3 recent deaths. And Bernie, gone. But we found something you should see." Despite protests from other officers, Detective Reyes escorted Melissa into the basement, now bustling with crime scene technicians. In the center of the room stood a display case containing items from the photograph: the croquet mallet Billy the Kid had leaned on, the distinctive medallion, and several tintype photographs. Beside them lay modern counterparts: a baseball bat with dark stains, a medallion identical to the historical one, and digital photographs of 3 hanging victims. "He documented everything, connecting his actions to his ancestors," Detective Reyes said. "But there's more." She led Melissa to a large map pinned to the wall. Red pins marked locations across the state, some with dates corresponding to the list, others unmarked. "We think these are planned future sites," Detective Reyes explained, "and this one is marked for tonight." The pin was labeled with today's date and a name: Melissa Garrison. "He knew you were figuring it out," Detective Reyes said quietly. "Your purchase of that photograph triggered something. We found notes about you. He believed you were related to one of the original regulators." Melissa felt the blood drain from her face. "My mother's maiden name was Boder. Charlie Boder was a regulator killed during the Lincoln County War," she said. Detective Reyes confirmed. According to Bernie's journals, his family has been tracking descendants of the regulators for generations. The manhunt for Bernard "Bernie" Wilson lasted 3 days. Law enforcement across 4 states participated, focusing on locations marked on his map. They finally apprehended him near an isolated cabin in the mountains, a property that had been in his family for generations and bore a striking resemblance to the cabin in the photograph. Melissa's $2 thrift store find had unraveled a sprawling case connecting 12 murders across 40 years. Forensic teams discovered evidence linking 3 generations of the Wilson family to vigilante killings, all documented with meticulous records and photographs. "It's ironic," Melissa told Detective Reyes when the officer came to update her. "Bernie preserved the very evidence that brought him down. His family's obsession with documenting their justice created a perfect historical record of their crimes." "Some killers want recognition," Detective Reyes replied. "They just usually don't wait 150 years for it." In the following weeks, Melissa worked with the Historical Society and law enforcement to properly document and authenticate the Billy the Kid photograph and associated artifacts. The publicity surrounding the case brought in experts from across the country. "It's legitimate," Professor Blackwood confirmed after extensive analysis. This photograph captures Billy the Kid and several regulators at Tunstall's Ranch in early 1878. It's only the third authenticated image of him ever discovered. The photograph's value was estimated at several $1,000,000. As evidence in an active investigation, it would remain in police custody for months, but ultimately would be returned to Melissa as its legal purchaser. "What will you do with it?" Dr. Weber asked her one afternoon as they cataloged other items recovered from Bernie's collection. "Donate it to a museum," she answered without hesitation, "with one condition, that it's displayed alongside the full story of how it was discovered. Not just Billy the Kid, but the Wilson family legacy and their victims. History isn't just about famous outlaws. It's about recognizing patterns of justice and injustice across generations." The final piece of the puzzle came when genealogical research confirmed Melissa's distant relation to Charlie Boder, just as Bernie had suspected. Her great-great-grandmother had been Boder's niece, who had changed her name after the Lincoln County War to escape the notorious association. 6 months later, Melissa stood in the county museum before a new exhibition titled Justice and Vengeance: The Legacy of the Lincoln County War. At its center was her photograph alongside contemporary news articles about Bernie's capture. A young visitor approached, looking at the display. Melissa smiled. "I did. It's a reminder that history isn't always buried in archives or displayed in fancy museums. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to look closer." As the museum closed that evening, Melissa took one last look at the photograph that had changed so many lives, including her own. What had begun as a casual Friday afternoon thrift store purchase had uncovered a century-and-a-half legacy of violence and finally brought it to an end. All because she had looked closer and made that crucial call to 911. The $2 thrift store photograph that could have been anyone's casual purchase became the key to solving cold cases spanning more than a century. What overlooked treasures might be hiding in your local secondhand shops? Or perhaps the better question is, what secrets are better left undiscovered? If you enjoyed this chilling true story, hit that subscribe button and join us next time for more extraordinary discoveries that change lives forever. Thank you for treading this trail of tales till we travel together again on another adventure.